Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you all hear me nice and clearly? Thank you very much for joining us this evening. My name is Sarah McLeod and I'm the Chief Executive here at Wentworth. It's lovely to see so many of you here. We are going to be recording tonight's session, not on film but on audio, for those who weren't able to make it here. We've been having some technical problems. Old houses and technology don't often go well together. So it's an audio recording as opposed to a live stream, but just to let you know that potentially you could be recorded. So if anybody has a problem with that, let us know. A little bit of housekeeping, just before we kick off. The alarm should not go off tonight, but anything's possible. If the alarm does go off, don't panic. Our team, who you'll see at the back of the room there, will guide you down the stairs and out of the front of the building onto the grass at the front there. If you need to go to the toilet at all or down to the restrooms, just go to the doorway and our volunteers again will show you the way downstairs to the toilets. Okay. So thanks to all of you for the many questions that have been sent in. We have far more questions than we will ever be able to answer in one evening. So just to tell you what's going to happen, we're going to start the evening and I've got a list of questions here that have come in from you, the audience, and from others, where I will ask the panel. I'll give the question to all members of the panel and we'll run along the panel and get their opinions, and hopefully we will also have a chance to get your opinions too. If there's people in the audience who would like to respond to what we're saying, please do put your hand up, and once all panellists have had the opportunity to respond, I will then try to take questions from the audience. I don't know how long it will take to answer questions. It depends how much we debate, I guess. There's no right or wrong answers really tonight. It's all a question of opinion and discussion. But I have a set of questions that will run through the whole panel. Depending on how long that takes, if we have time, when we've completed those questions, I will then revert to some of the questions we've had sent in, which are quite specific, and therefore there may only be one member of the panel who might be able to answer them. So if we've got time, I'll do that sort of quick fire round where I take the questions that were sent in and target them specifically at one of our panel. Okay. So I guess the next thing for me to do is to introduce the panel. We've only got 3 microphones between the 5 of us, so if you'd like to switch your microphone on, Giles, introduce yourself and then pass it on.
Hi, I'm Giles Proctor. I'm an architect who work for Historic England, and so my sort of initial involvement with here was actually trying to get to grips with the condition of the building before the trust existed, and then subsequent to that I've been sort of dealing with grant for the repairs which have been done so far.
Hello, my name is Dorian Proudfoot and I'm a conservation architect and director at Donald Insall Associates, and we've been the architects that worked on the property since the trust took it on, and I've been the contract administrator for all of the major projects that have been going on here recently.
Good evening everybody, I'm Julia Reeman and I'm the Facilities and Maintenance Manager here at Wentworth Woodhouse, and I started just as the Trust took over the property in March 2017, so I've been here for 6 years. I can tell you I've learned an awful lot about the building and its history in that time. I'll hand you over to our resident historian.
I'm Dave Gallagher, I'm the archivist here at Wentworth. I've been here for 10 years, and literally we are going from strength to strength. People like yourself have been very good on sharing information with us, finding wonderful things out, both in Sheffield Archives, and even various members of the family who are giving us information and things. And really, the only way is upwards and forwards with the Wentworth Woodhouse Preservation Trust.
Thank you. And as I said, I'm Sarah, the Chief Exec. I've been here since the Trust took over with Julie here, since 2017, and prior to being at Wentworth, I was Chief Exec of the World Heritage Society in Derbyshire, doing a similar project, industrial heritage, rather than a country house, but major, large-scale regeneration of historic buildings is my background. So, I'm going to kick off with the first question. I'm really sorry if I don't have the name of the person who put the question forward. You will know who you are, I'm sure. But our first question tonight is a great one. It's in an age where increasing numbers of people are visiting food banks, how can you justify spending millions on the restoration of Wentworth Woodhouse, and why is it money well spent? So I think that's an excellent question. I'm going to pose that one to begin with to Giles.
Oh, great. Well, yes, I mean, it is sort of difficult and perhaps sensitive question, but I think that really a place like this, as I think we've seen over the last few years since the Trust has taken it on, has the ability to actually provide sort of sustenance in a way that I mean it's rather like that. It's rather like that business about giving a person a fish and you feed them for a day, teaching them to fish. They learn to support themselves for life. That actually it's produced an awful lot here that is of enormous value within the local area. I mean, sort of permanent jobs, some salaried, some volunteering, but which have added hugely to the local area. It's also an absolutely wonderful sort of heritage asset to the area, something that's quite outside what people think Rotherham is about. It's sort of something really special that you've got here, which few people knew about a few years ago, but it's suddenly become much more widely known. I think it's something to be immensely proud of.
Well, so being a conservation architect, obviously I'm biased, and I think it's really important that buildings such as this, hugely significant, are kept alive through the restoration work. But something that we've been involved in all of the projects that we've done is making sure that there are apprentices to encourage the training of heritage skills. So there's a shortage in heritage skills that we all know about, and what we try to do is insist that each contractor that works here has a certain number of apprentices. So on our roofing project there were a roofing apprentice, leadwork apprentices, we've had plastering apprentices. These skills that are dying out unless we encourage them through the restoration of these buildings. We've also had the Hamish Ogston Foundation came here last summer for the summer school, and there was 30 apprentices all working here for 8 weeks on various different career paths. But it's a place to kind of draw everyone together who's got an interest in heritage construction.
Well, I've had the privilege of living and working in South Yorkshire all my working life, all my life, and I've always been involved in regeneration of some form or another, and everything that I've done really been pretty proud of, helping small to medium-sized businesses grow and flourish. But this project really, for me, is all about pride. There's taking pride in what we're doing, and pride in Rotherham in particular, but South Yorkshire in general as well. So I think for me, and the other panel members have mentioned apprenticeships, we also do a lot of stuff about with education for young children. Schools come in here a lot, and even when we're closed on a Monday, we're often entertaining school children and diverse parties who never normally come to a state home like this. So I think there's lots of spin-off benefits.
Wentworth Woodhouse was once the powerhouse of the north, certainly at the time of the second march of Rockingham. As times went on, of the Rockinghams and Fitzwilliams in times of hardship would look after their tenants, their estate workers, and try to do the best that they could for them. And certainly here at the Trust, we have, as I'm sure you're aware, the postcode Sunday once a month, where people from various different postcodes are allowed free access to come here, have a day out, and support what we do at Wentworth Woodhouse. But certainly, in the 5 years that we've been at Trust, I was at a meeting last year with Dame Julie Kenny, Chairman of our Trustees, and she was saying that apart from what people had actually spent in the house, they'd spent at least $12.5 million in the local economy, which benefits us, but certainly benefits all the areas around by creating employment, creating jobs, and making South Yorkshire a place to be proud of.
Thank you, all of you. And I would just add to that, I think historically the house had always created its own economy, and I think we're trying to recreate that in a 21st century style. As Giles alluded to, and David, it's about generating income into the local economy so that everybody benefits from that. It's about job creation, it's about training. So whilst the building is very important architecturally, and it's a real asset for us nationally and internationally, and of course, you know, it's very important. It is really about the impact that the money makes in investing it into Wentworth Woodhouse. It's the impact that makes on the communities that live within the South Yorkshire region, I think, which is the big motivator for the Trust. I don't know who asked that question, but I wonder, is there anybody in the audience who feels that we shouldn't restore Wentworth Woodhouse and that it is not money well spent? Don't be frightened, we're not going to send you home. Well, I'm delighted that you think it's a project worth investing in. I truly believe it is. The sums of money we talk about at Wentworth are really significant sums, although I have to say they're nothing compared to the amount of money that is being spent on the Palace of Westminster at the moment for a home for our MPs. But nevertheless, it is significant. They are significant sums of money, but I do think that when you look at the big country houses in this country that are fully restored and fully functioning, you can really see the financial impact and social and economic impacts that those places have. So thank you for that. Question number 2. What are the greatest challenges for the Trust and the wider regeneration team in creating a new life for Wentworth Woodhouse? And I'm going to pass that initially to Dorian.
So with projects of this scale, you get the headaches of a similar scale. You know, if you imagine a building project, you get lots of unforeseen issues. So everything here is supersized. Being such a significant building, you know, constructed in the 18th century using the highest quality materials that were available at the time, when we're repairing, restoring, or renewing any elements of the building, then we have to be very thoughtful with how we specify materials. A building like this, when we're spending money, you know, government money, public money on repairing it, we need to do the absolute best job possible to minimise the ongoing cost, etc. for the trust. So we're adding insulation where possible. We're trying to improve the roofs to deal with the climate change. When we're doing projects in other areas of the building, we're trying to introduce sustainable, renewable heating systems, etc., so that there is the lowest possible cost in the future for the trust financially and to the environment. So it requires a lot of careful consideration and experience to work on a building like this. And when you come into doing the work with the contractors, you inevitably get unforeseen surprises on site. Those need to be dealt with, you know, quickly, and with everyone's interest. Historic England need to be involved. So there's, you know, the projects are quite complex. Consent has been quite a challenge as well. So, making sure that we're getting the right listed building consents and planning consents. We have to consider the wider impact of the development here on the village, and wider still, so increase in traffic, etc. So we're having to consider all those things when we're putting forward proposals for the repairs here and regeneration.
Giles, do you want to add something to that about the challenges? You obviously at Historic England you deal with lots of projects like this.
Yeah, well, not many quite like this. I mean, this is on a sort of different scale to many things we're involved with. Although actually I've got 2 projects which are quite challenging at the moment, this and another. But I think one of the things here is that actually following the closure of the college in the 1980s, parts of this building and the stables, etc., were unused and unmaintained for 30, almost 40 years before the trust was established. And the backlog of maintenance that built up over that time means that actually securing the funding to do the repairs necessary takes time, and the buildings are actually decaying faster than we can actually repair them. So I mean that's an enormous challenge, and we could really do with somebody putting £50 million into the place or something. What a huge difference, but it's probably not going to happen. So it's actually identifying where we can make the greatest impact, and just as when we repaired the roof over where you're sitting at the moment, and we've managed to repair the roofs from one end of the east front to the other, but it was actually preventing the rainwater getting in and decaying what was underneath it, and trying to actually focus on those sort of bits that nobody actually sees. Once the roof is repaired, everybody forgets that it's been done, but it's so important. And that actually, if we can pick off those bits, what's below the roof level, we can go up rather more slowly over a period of time. So it's actually getting the funds in before things get too bad. That's the real challenge.
Julie, you're in charge of maintenance, and so you have the everyday challenge of looking after the bits of the building that have not yet been restored. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was going down the corridor the other day and Sarah said, don't ask me for any money today, which is kind of a standard thing. Something else has fallen to pieces or dropped off. So really echoing Giles' thoughts, really, it is the staggering amount of decay that still exists. We've worked really hard over the past 6 years, and we've managed to get about 65% of the mansion roofs done, but that leaves 35% to do still. And at the stables, we've done 20% of the roofs, so there's still 80% to do. We've also had an awful lot of other problems and remediation that we needed to do that you just can't see, it's just not visible to anybody, so work on contamination, etc. So yeah, I think that is, for me, certainly that's the biggest challenge, because I go into derelict rooms and think, oh dear, we need another prop. So yeah, big challenge.
David, would you like to add anything?
I think really we need to preserve this building both for its self-importance, for the importance in this area, both Rotherham and South Yorkshire, and really worldwide. And I think, and I'm confident that the way that the trust is headed, we will certainly go places, and I can envisage both Wentworth Woodhouse and possibly Elsica becoming a World Heritage Site within the foreseeable future. And by rights, all of us here and everyone around this area, we all deserve it because of what we've got and what's still here for us to take forward.
Dave, can I just ask you, what do you see as challenges in terms of keeping the history of the house alive as we regenerate it with new uses?
I think for many years, if you wanted to learn anything about certain books were published, certain ones that were published in the 80s that were very factual, but it was difficult to find anything that was actually of substance. Now, Wentworth, as you know, is a big jigsaw. We gradually, both the archives team and the digital team that we have here, are putting pieces in that jigsaw. Lots of things are coming to light, lots of people sharing information with us, and we need to keep that information, but also we need to share it both with our visitors and worldwide, because certainly, like I said earlier, we were one of the pioneers of the North. We were very important, and just the things that happened here, we need to regain its place in the history of the country.
Thank you. Okay, question number 3. What is it about Wentworth Woodhouse that makes it a special place for each of the panel members? And I will be asking some of you in the audience about this after our panellists respond. Perhaps Julie, tell me, what makes it so special for you?
Well, I do think it is the history and the power of that history. I mean, it's fascinating when you delve back into it. There's so many twists and turns with the property, and its impact on the social fabric of the area as well. So for me, I think it's the rich history that we've got, and also I feel very privileged to be part of trying to paint its future.
David?
I've always really been interested in this place since I was a child, because you could see it from just the top of the road where I live. In the distance, you can see this ginormous house if you want to know more about it. So you go off on a search and try and find information. And like I said earlier, it just wasn't there. But we are getting there. And it is a nice place. You walk in, it's friendly. We are making sure that our generation looks after this building and we take it further forward. But also the histories from the past. Lots of people sharing things with us. We're going to record them, we have recorded them, and it just makes it there for future generations that we've not messed everything up and we have done something worthwhile with the time that we've been here.
Thank you. Giles, why is Wentworth Woodhouse special to you, for you rather?
There are all sorts of things which are really special about this place, but what really impresses me is the quality of the architecture and the craftsmanship. So that, I mean, we're sitting in this room at the moment, and the sheer quality of the plasterwork in here and the detailing makes everything very wonderfully, beautifully thought out. And it's those sort of glimpses you get of the house, like the statues on the roof against a blue sky or something like that, when it's looking really exotic. And I remember a few years ago I went to Vienna, and I went round the Schönbrunn Palace where the emperor lived. And I was walking around the Schönbrunn Palace and I was thinking, this is a really dreary place. Wentworth Woodhouse is far better than this. So, you know, it was that, really.
And Doria?
I think it's such a rare, so grade 1 listed buildings are very rare. I think the stats are, I think only 2% of all listed buildings are grade 1 and 2-star. This is a grade 1 listed building. This is, you know, it's so incredibly special in terms of the, architectural history. So just being a conservation architect, getting to work on a building like this is an absolute honour. Personally, what makes this project and being involved in the projects here, why they're so special is that I really feel part of the team. You know, we work on we're lucky to work on many different special listed buildings in our career, but here, you know, I've been able to really feel like I'm valuable because we're involved from the beginning of projects. We really get stuck in. I'm here every week. You know, I've been coming here every Wednesday for 5 years. You know, I really feel like I'm part of the furniture, which it's a privilege. So yeah, I just feel in those. Yeah, I'm here so often working on the buildings that it means that we're here, you know, late at night or you know, for the first person here in the morning, and you sometimes you get the whole place to yourself, which is just a strange sensation of walking out the front door and shutting it on your way out. It's yeah, I feel very fortunate.
Thank you. And from my perspective, I've been here since 2017 when the trust came to the site, having not been to Wentworth before, though I'd certainly heard about Wentworth Woodhouse before then. For me, what makes this place so special, as corny as it sounds, is the people. That's the people who volunteer here, the people who work here, and the people who visit here, and the community in this part of the world. I have never worked on a heritage restoration project where there has been such tremendous support and love from the community that's around the project. And that makes a huge difference to us working on the project. But I think you sense that, you can really feel that when you walk through the door here. So many people when I travel around the country say to me, you know, gosh, what you've got at Wentworth is magical. The feeling you get as you walk through the door, the warmth from the people in that part of the world is really tremendous. So I think that's real credit to the people of South Yorkshire, that they're what really make this place. I just wondered if there's anybody in the audience that feels Wentworth is very special to them, and if they'd like to share with us why it is so special to them. Come on, don't be frightened. Please tell me somebody feels is special to them. Yes.
Well, it's special to me, I think, like you, it's the people, it's the volunteers. I'm a volunteer, and I'm privileged to volunteer for the research group and for the digital team. And the people I work with are incredible. The gardeners are wonderful. As a visitor, we watch people come in and we chat to them and we engage with them and we tell all the stories that we know about the house. And it's just an incredible experience. And I was watching the kids put together the mythical beast up on the hill. They were so proud of the work that they'd done. They literally were bursting with pride, and it made me feel very proud to be part of that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else like to tell us why Wentworth is special to them? Come on, let's say more. You can be brave. Okay, by the end of it, I shall have you all talking. I'm not going to use my microphone because I'm hoping you can all hear me. Can you all hear me? I think it's sometimes easier without it. Okay, next question. I've done that one. Number 4. Should Wentworth Woodhouse be restored to its former self in terms of its rooms and its contents, or should they be given a more contemporary use? Now, quite an interesting question this, because there's no right or wrong. This is a matter of opinion. So perhaps if I could start with you, David. Should Wentworth be restored to its former self, or should it have new contemporary use?
The jury's out. I think that we at Wentworth have the chance of reinventing country house visiting. Certainly, some rooms should be, where possible, put back to as they were. We have the 1924 Country Life pictures, we can see what was there, and certain ones, it would be nice to see those things back. But then again, the other rooms, we're a blank canvas. We're starting to have travelling exhibitions. Why should we, as people here, have to travel to London to see an art exhibition? Why can't the art exhibition come to us? So I think really, whilst what was here is immensely important, absolutely unbelievable, if you think in 1948, between 1948 and 49, the Fitzwilliams sold over 4,500 items that they no longer wanted or no longer had a use for. Really, there's highly unlikely that a lot of that will come back. But the empty spaces that we've got, we can use them to create income, to create interest, and get repeat visitors, because people like yourselves, we like to see you every week, we like you to keep coming through the door, because that's what the trust is all about, and it's also sharing Wentworth with what we've got.
So I think having a mixed use is the answer. You know, we have to be flexible to meet the needs of a very diverse audience that we want to attract here. And it's not just about this building, the building that you're seeing, it's also about the stables. And the stables will be developed as a hopefully a very successful event venue over time. You know, there's some quite large spaces up there once they're redeveloped. I mean, we are talking quite a number of years down the track, but we should be able to do lots of very entertaining and interesting things in that part of the site that we simply can't do here very well. So I do think that we need a mixed use. We need to appeal to those who want to see the traditional country house. And I know David may disagree with me on this point. You know, I'd like to see a lot more digital interpretation in the house as well. David said, I remember David saying to me right in the early days, it's not Disney, you know.
But since then, we started to do Kensington Palace, we need to go through.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, some of you may have seen the, I can't remember what they called it, when we had the ladies speaking, the two servant ladies speaking.
If Walls Could Talk.
If Walls Could Talk. I don't know whether you saw that exhibition, where they were the two maids chatting to one another in a digital manner. And then we had a portrait up here of some past residents chatting to one another. And that, for me, anyway, as a visitor, helps it bring it to life. And I don't particularly mind the furniture, but I would like to see some interpretation of those rooms, perhaps in the digital manner, so that you could actually see the furniture, how it was arranged in the country life photos in the early 20th century. So yeah, mixed use.
Thank you. I am going to put my microphone on, just so those on the recording can hear. Before I hand over to the two architects in the room, I'll just add to what Julie said. I think first of all, we've got plenty of space. So there's an opportunity to do lots of things. We don't just have to do one single thing. When it comes to the visitor experience coming to Wentworth, I don't really understand why we pick a point in country houses history and try to recreate spaces as they were at one particular point, because country houses were forever changing. They were always contemporary, they were always of their time, and the owners of houses like Wentworth Woodhouse were always buying new art and new pieces of furniture. So they were very much of their day. And I wouldn't want to recreate something here at Wentworth that is completely static and that just represents a single moment in time. Having said that, it would be wonderful to be able to bring different historic pieces back here and to display them, either permanently or on a temporary basis. And I think we've got the space for us to do a little bit of the traditional and a little bit of the contemporary as well. But I will hand over to the two architects, because Dorian particularly, in terms of the wider site, I mean, we've just been talking now about the rooms and whether we should put them back as they once were, but actually the development of Wentworth Woodhouse is more than just the rooms, isn't it? More than just the state rooms.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here because of the variety of conditions that the buildings and the rooms within them are in currently. You know, there's so many different changes that have happened over the lifetime of the estate, and that's what our current starting point is, you know, with the work that we're doing today. So there are rooms like this which are relatively untouched. However, up at the stables, where the college made quite a lot of intervention, you know, the rooms have been completely changed, and the buildings are completely changed. They've got, you know, new openings in them for the ventilation system for the gymnasium, and, you know, they're completely new floors in the stables. So it wouldn't be right to spend money to undo those changes and go back to a historical moment. I think, you know, there's a bright future for the estate, and in order for it to survive, we need to make as much use out of all the spaces as possible. And the fact that they're in the current conditions that they're in now gives us the opportunity to do that. But Giles may disagree.
I disagree. No, I don't disagree as far as the stables are concerned. I think that we've got an opportunity there to create something that's going to be really valuable to Wentworth in terms of income generation, apart from anything. But I mean, when it comes to the house, you've got sort of set-piece staterooms like this, where if at some point it becomes possible to bring some of their original contents back, it would be a wonderful thing, as it would actually put the rooms back into the form they were intended to have. You know, the spaces for hanging the pictures set in the room, and some of the furniture that was designed for them. But then there are lots of other rooms in the house which might be very nice rooms, but they're just another bedroom or another dressing room or whatever. And there's just so many bedrooms and dressing rooms you can actually want to see. I mean, you might want to see one or maybe two, but there are lots of spaces which can be used for different types of exhibit and different types of use. So, I mean, it is going to be a sort of mixed economy from that point of view, and it will depend upon what might possibly become available in the future, and being able to take the opportunity when it comes. So, you know, we're just at the point now where now the rain is no longer coming through the roof. We can begin to think about how we actually deal with the spaces below and make them more vital and interesting.
Thank you, Giles. Okay, we're going to move on to a slightly different part of the site now, because the next question says, what is happening with the Camellia House? How has the restoration programme been going? When will it open? And what will it be? So there's quite a lot of questions there all in one. So I'm going to ask different members of the panel to answer. So in terms of the restoration programme that's been going on now, I don't know if Giles or Dorian want to comment on that, because Dorian, you've been managing that project, and Giles, you're here regularly monitoring what we're doing. How, in your view, has the project at the Camellia House been going?
Me? Right. Yeah, well, the Camellia House, I mean, that's case in point. You know, a building which has really suffered over the years. It wasn't originally built as the Camellia House, it was altered to be the Camellia House in the early 19th century, when they thought that camellias were tremendously sensitive plants which had to be under glass, otherwise they'd die in the British winter. Whereas in fact actually they flourish in people's gardens, and you don't need to put them under glass at all. So we've got a Camellia House with the historic camellias in it, and so we've got camellia trees which are at least 210 years old, which is, you know, pretty good going. And we also needed to give the Camellia House new use, and so it's going to be a tea room. So we actually had to make it something that people could sit in and drink tea, whilst not killing the camellias at the same time by making it too warm. So we've got that difficult balance. And I was there on Wednesday, and the project is almost complete, and it is looking absolutely fantastic. I mean, it really is going to be something worth seeing. So everybody needs to rush along, order their tea, sit amongst the camellias. You have to go about sort of May time to see them in flower. Otherwise, I think there'll be sort of tying paper flowers to the empty branches to give the impression. But I mean, it is looking really splendid. So it's also take your coat if you go outside summer, as we'll need to keep the temperature low, otherwise the camellias will suffer.
Dorian?
Yeah, it's been a fantastic project to be involved in. What I like about the project is that we have, like I said earlier, tried to introduce kind of modern technologies into the building. So actually originally it did have a hypocaust, so there were stoke holes that were burning coal to create, you know, warm air that went underneath the floor in there. What we've done with the new project is ground source heat pumps, which work with the underfloor heating system. We're also collecting the rainwater, so that we can feed the camellias with rainwater rather than mains water, which has additives and chlorine, etc. We've tried to insulate the building as much as possible so that the tea room is comfortable, and it's just lovely to see what really was a ruin, a roofless ruin, with plastic on the roofs and all sorts of issues. Everything had been stripped out inside, going back to almost, as Giles says, a complete new building which is going to have a new life. So it's a very exciting stage in the project.
Thank you. Julie, you've been involved heavily?
We talked a lot about what we like. I can tell you what I don't like, and that is trying to get the services up there. That's been a bit of a challenge. So you can imagine we've got to get data cables, we've got to get new electric, not substation, but new electrical supply, entirely brand new, a complete new water system up there, electricity, you name it. So that has been very challenging at times. And we are still, although we've looked after the camellias very well during the build project, I'm still sort of biting my fingers a little bit, because it's under glass, there's a lot of sun out. The blinds haven't quite gone up yet, but they will go up next week. But, we don't know how the camellias will react. So hopefully they will be fine. But that's the bit I can't say it's been enjoyable, it's been really hard to get all that right.
I'll just add to that, I don't know, David, if you want to say something, I'll just add to that the joy of the Camellia House has been that it has been our first project here as a trust, where we've taken an entire building and brought it back into a new use. Up until that point, we have been doing repairs across, major repair programs across the site, but to actually bring a whole building back into a new use has been fantastic. There was a point during the Camellia House project where the building was completely covered in scaffold, and although we'd left light boxes, gaps in the scaffold for the light to come through to the camellias, it was obvious that they were suffering and they weren't getting enough light. And we were really fortunate that a company called Lumitech came along and helped us by providing us with UV lighting, specialist plant horticultural UV lighting, which was like putting ladies under a sunbed. So the camellia plants absolutely loved this new lighting that we put in, and I must say they look fantastic. Yeah, I was very reluctant to take it off them once we took the scaffold down. But in terms of what's happening with the Camellia House, it will not open until March of next year. So the camellias come into flower for a short period, around March, April time, our camellias. And we want to make sure that we do the formal opening of it at that time, so people can see it in all of its glory. The other reason for not opening it this year is because the landscape all around the Camellia House has been massively churned up. So if you walk up through the gardens, you'll see that all of the Harris fencing is there. And that's because the ground source heat pump system meant that we had to completely dig up the lawn to put the pipe work in, and it needs time to recover. So what we don't want is to have people walking across that part of the site until it's all had a chance to just settle down. We will be doing a few group visits up there over the next few months just to test the systems out and test out the menus and that kind of thing. But as Giles said, it will be a global tea house, so we will sell teas, because obviously camellias are tea plants. We will be selling teas, a variety of teas from across the world. The whole idea with that is that we wanted it to be a really inclusive place, and we sort of recognise that everybody drinks tea. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, black or white, if you're old or young, everybody loves a cuppa, and we wanted to make sure that we had a real variety of teas to represent the teas from across the world. So I think it's going to be a really super place and a fantastic addition to the site, but unfortunately you have to wait till next March for the opening. Okay, next question. Again, still related to the Camellia House. What statues were on top of the Camellia House? Where have they gone? And are they likely to be returned or replaced? So I'm going to start this one with David. David, what can you tell us about the statues that were on the Camellia House?
Actually, I know very little. I know it's the Four Seasons. They were certainly there in the 1930s. At what point they came down, I don't know whether anybody else on the panel actually does. We know that local people talk about packing statues into crates and shipping them off to Milton. But obviously they're not at Milton because they've got their own set, which they got in the 1790s. It may have been that when college was moving out, various things disappeared. When Mr. Hayden Bailey was here, certain things disappeared. And again, later on, things went, it shouldn't have gone. So really it's a mystery, and hopefully it's a mystery that one day will be able to sort and shed light on.
Okay. Giles, you're a bit of an expert on the Four Seasons. Tell us what are the Four Seasons statues and why do country houses have them?
Right, so the Four Seasons are usually ladies who sort of who are representative of the seasons, so that you've got, you know, one sort of wrapping her clothes around her, and she's winter, you know, she's sort of shivering away, and then you've got the two in the middle, one holding sort of blossom and things like that, representing spring, the other holding sort of larger flowers, or even sunflowers or something like that, representing summer. And then you've got autumn, who will be carrying sort of sheaves of corn, so harvest and, you know, abundance and things like that. So it's really actually sort of representative of the purpose of the garden, which is, you know, sort of to grow flowers and fruit and vegetables and the purpose of the surrounding estate growing corn, so that you can find them quite commonly. The other thing that you had at the Camellia House were these sort of fruit and flower baskets at either end, which apparently actually are at Milton, the actual ones which came off the roof there. And so again, it's sort of representing the sort of fecundity of the garden or whatever. And from the point of view of when they disappeared, I looked very, very closely at an aerial photograph showing the open cast mining around Wentworth Woodhouse. So I suppose it was probably late 1940s, early 1950s, and you can just pick out the statues on the roof of the Camellia House. So it was some time after then, but before the early 1960s, where we've got a photograph which shows they weren't there. So somebody did something with them between those dates.
I know that, and you might be able to say something on this story, that the Camellia House is tipped slightly at an angle as a result of the open cast. So I think we discussed maybe at some point they might have fallen from the top.
Yeah.
Don't know if you want to add anything to that. We'll talk about a little bit about our plans to put them back.
The Camellia House certainly is leaning, and I think you'll be able to see, you can see it with the naked eye. It's so much so that when we got the survey drawings back from the survey company, we sent them back and said, this can't possibly be right. It looks like it's about to fall over. But it's true, and it really is leaning forward and to the side as well. So that's been a bit of a headache for the builders, especially because it's got a new glass roof on and they need to go on level. So that's been a bit of a headache for them. But it would be nice to reinstate statues, and we've got planning permission and listed building consent to do that. There are options. And I think it's similar to a few of our opinions on reinstatement of the mansion and rooms within, that it's also an opportunity. You know, if the originals can't be found, then there's an opportunity there for us to put back new statues on the same theme, but not necessarily 100% carbon copies. You know, there could be a bit of a contemporary twist there, but that certainly is a subject for debate.
Yes, and we have been having that debate about whether the statues should be exact replicas or whether they could be contemporary interpretations. And it's quite a hot debate. I must say there are a lot of people who think one way and there are a lot of people who think the other way. So it's not been decided by any means. The jury's out and we will continue to those discussions. I think it's fantastic though that we have our very own leaning house of Camellia House of Culture. So forget about the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We've actually got our very own one here in Robert. But as Dory said, there is quite a tilt on it. When we were obviously going to be going in there and having cups of tea, we had to test it out to make sure that when we put the floor down that we weren't going to be having a cup of tea that would be spilling over the sides because of the angle of the floor. But I think we've got it right, don't we?
We did the mug test.
We did the mug test, yeah, it's been a fascinating project. Okay, another great question here. What are the plans for making the house accessible for all? A real challenge in a historic Grade 1 listed house. Perhaps we'll start with Julie. Do you want to start on that one?
Okay, yeah, always a challenge. Those of you who know the house well know we have a ramp to get people into the ground floor. It's a big, ugly monstrosity. We don't want it to be there. We do have plans drawn up for how we would get accessible at the ground floor level without that big ramp there. But it is all about scheduling and finding the resources to put it in. And then the next big challenge is getting people up to this floor, the principal floor of the room. And we were discussing this at length only yesterday. So we have two key sites for a lift access or for a platform lift access. One is, those of you who know the house well, who knows where the oak staircase is?
We need to take these people on a tour.
Yeah, so that's the favoured site for a lift, which would hopefully eventually, when we have the surveys done, if it works, right from the cellars, right up to the top floor of the building, which would be absolutely fantastic if we can do that. It's going to be phenomenally expensive, so that is always a big consideration, of course. And then the other one is at this side of the building, to come up in what is now the service area of the building on the north range, and then come up in one of the libraries, which would make this part of the site certainly very accessible. It would give us some other complications, but so they're the things we're looking at the moment. So we've been thinking about it for quite a long time, and we're now at the stage of trying to actually plan it in and get it associated with another part of redevelopment as well. Because trying to fit the lift in as a standalone project is quite difficult from a funding point of view. There's lots of other things about accessibility as well, so like hearing loops and all that sort of thing that we try our best with, and you may notice that we've got some scooters. We've just got 2 new scooters that are in the pillared hall for our guests who need a little help perhaps getting around the garden. We've just put in a ramp in the garden, so now you don't have to go up steps to get to the West Gardens, which is a great addition to the garden. We're really pleased about that, and that went in record time, about 5 days. But it was still fairly costly, but we got that done, so that's brilliant. And there's lots of other places in the building that have steps in between. So, for example, into the long gallery here, we've got a set of steps, and eventually we do plan to have little platform lifts in various locations. But the building we have to do other things with the building before we can actually do that.
Dorian, would you like to just talk a little bit about the accessibility measures that we've introduced at the Community House?
So we have changed the landscape around the Community House. The north elevation is the entrance to the Community House. That did have a couple of steps up to it. We have, in doing the development around it, we've kind of brought the ground up so that you have completely level access into the tea room. From there, we've made sure that there is level access through into the Camellia room. We've got an accessible toilet within the Camellia House, as well as 3 unisex toilets, but the accessible toilet is on the same level as the tea room. And then we've also been fortunate to get a grant to install a changing places toilet, So that's even larger than an accessibility toilet, with hoists, and there's a shower and a bench. So that's made that area of the site very, very accessible in terms of facilities. And then in terms of the fit out, so the servery counter where you get your tea and your food from, we're trying to make sure that also, is as easy as possible for people of all abilities as well.
Thank you, and I would just add to that touching on what Julie said, accessibility is not just around people with mobility issues, it's around lots of hidden disabilities as well. So there is a commitment on the part of the Trust that we train our staff and train our volunteers on an ongoing basis to better understand conditions like dementia, autism and deaf and visually impaired, because houses like this, and I'm sure Giles can add to this, historic houses are a bit of a nightmare, frankly, when it comes to accessibility, because technology, as I said at the beginning, is not great either, because these houses have such thick walls. So actually trying to use technology to help with accessibility can be a real challenge. I think the other thing on behalf of the Trust is that we've made a commitment to employing people with disabilities, whether that's paid employment or volunteering, and I think actions speak louder than words. It's very easy to state that you're going to do this and you're going to do that, you believe in this and you believe in that, but I think actually committing to making those kinds of decisions and employing people with disabilities is fantastic. We've got some fantastic members of staff here who really, really add to our team. So, Giles, just to finish, did you want to say anything on accessibility more widely in the heritage sector?
Yeah, I think that, it's something that's become increasingly important. And we know, one of the things that we know is that people who do have disabilities actually want to be able to access places in as natural a way as possible. They don't want to be made to feel as if they're different or special cases. But at the same time, visiting a place like this, they don't want the place to have been butchered as well, to allow access. So it needs to be introduced with enormous care so that actually it just feels like sort of a natural part of the place that this provision is made, so that you really hardly notice that it's there, but it is. And that one of the other things is that you might need to sort of think about things in different ways. For example, people who are wheelchair users don't necessarily want to have 2 stories of ramps to go up in order to get somewhere, so that actually a lift or a platform lift or something like that can actually provide a way of moving around a building without it causing a huge amount of effort in order to do so. So, it's just sort of working through everything so it works as naturally as possible.
Thank you, Giles. Okay, here's the question you've all been waiting for tonight. Now the Camellia House project is drawing to a close, what will be the next major project? And how do we prioritise what we do next? So, the next major project is at the stables. And I'm going to hand firstly to Dorian to tell us what's happening at the moment and what might be happening in the future.
So this is very exciting because just last week we started the next major project, the construction phase, and that is up at the stables, and that is the Levelling Up Fund project, so funding from the Levelling Up Fund to transform the southwest corner of the stables into a kitchen, which will have a huge impact on the estate and their ability to generate more income and provide events, etc. It also involved the removal of quite significant area of college infill building work at the stables between the south range, which is the coach house, so the buildings that you see as you go into the stables in front of you, and the riding school, which is a magnificent building behind the coach house, but the college had infilled that entire courtyard with modern buildings to provide changing rooms for the students. So this project has started with a bang in the removal of those college infill buildings, which just absolutely transforms that space. So that project started and will probably take about a year, and we're very excited that it's underway.
Okay. Julie, would you like to talk a little bit about the work that's around the car park area that's taking place as well?
Okay, well those of you who are observant, as you drove down the drive today, you see on the right hand side there is no swimming pool building, so that was knocked down back end of last year, and we now have almost a complete car park, not quite, we've still got a little bit of work to do, and those who are very observant will have noticed that we definitely haven't done all of it. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford to do the full area of the car park just because of budget constraints. Hopefully we will complete that in future projects, in the not too distant future. But the new car park will eventually contain is it about 175 or 200? About 200 car parking spaces. That is well short of what we need in the long term, but it's a big improvement on what we've got now. It will have charging points in there for electric cars. Those of you who have electric cars, how many have we got? Just as a quick straw poll, how many electric car users have we got? Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay, excellent, well done. Yeah, so that's actually, looking at that rough split, if you are representative, then I would say we've got just about the right amount for the number of spaces that we've got. And there's lighting to go up in there and security cameras and all that sort of thing. And we also, but we've got quite a lot of work to do on the process and about how we're going to manage the car park and how we're going to fence it off and all this sort of thing from a temporary point of view until we get all the roads in, because it's a bit like when you buy a house on a housing estate and your house is done but your road up to it isn't done. We've got a few of those problems going on as well. So there's a few decisions yet to make. So maybe towards late summer we hope that the car park will be open. That's the sort of time frame that we're looking at, just in time for the winter season.
Thank you, Julie. So the stables is our priority at the moment, and there's lots of reasons for that. I think first and foremost, the stables are in a dreadful state. So although we've been able to do roof repairs down here on the east front of the mansion, the stables are, certain parts of the stables are really, really in serious danger of being lost. So that pushes them higher up the list of priority. I think the other thing is, in order to come in and do work on the mansion now, to do decorative work and restoration work inside the mansion, it would make it very difficult for us to operate as a business. So our plan is to develop the stables first, and then for us to all move up there whilst we then come back down to the mansion and do the restoration work, further restoration work at the mansion. For those of you who are not aware of what's happening, what the plan is for the stables, our aim is to turn the riding stall into a major multifunctional event space. So we will use that for events, for film studio work, for weddings, and you can have about 600 people in the riding stall. It's a huge space. So big multifunctional space. There will be 20 plus overnight accommodation bedrooms there. There's a real shortage of accommodation in this part of the world. And certainly if we're looking to host events here, host weddings here, people want accommodation. So there will be letting bedrooms at the stables. There'll also be bar, cafes, big production kitchens, as I think Dorian mentioned. We want to produce as much of our own food here on site as we can, rather than buying it in. That's from a health point of view, but also we want to try and avoid having deliveries coming in and out of the site all the time. So growing our own is a real priority for us, growing it and producing our own food in the production kitchens. So it's a big development, somewhere in the region of £50 million, but it is our priority, and we really do want to start with the Luff project that Dorian mentioned, but we're going to push on with the stables now and hopefully see the whole of that project done over the next sort of 5 to 10 years completion, but it's a very big project. If you've not been to the stables, I mean, the footprint's absolutely huge. Giles, are the stables the biggest country house stables in the country?
I think they're the biggest, which are still in their sort of original form. The largest were actually the Duke of Devonshire's stables at what's the place called in the Peak District?
Chatsworth.
No, not at Chatsworth. No, the town. Buxton, which was later converted into a sort of
Hotel.
no, it's got a dome over.
Oh, it's the college, isn't it?
It's
Oh,
the
University
concert hall. Okay, so they're the second largest country house stables in the country, and which is due to the second Marquess's interest in racehorses. So he had lots of horses out there. But I mean, as I was saying earlier, I mean, the problem with a lot of the buildings here is that the condition is deteriorating faster than we can actually do the repairs. So actually starting on a further phase of work on the stables is tremendous, as it's actually dealing with buildings which are falling to pieces, but actually at the end of the day producing something that should be generating income to help Wentworth Woodhouse move forward. And it will also be where we're baking the cakes to sell to people in the community house. So, you know, it's a really significant thing to be doing.
Thank you, Giles. David, a quick question from you that somebody asked was, how many horses were there at the stables?
Stables, which were built by John Carr 300 years ago of his birth this year, when they were built in 1766, to quote Arthur Young, his lordship is building the most magnificent kind of stable. It is to form a large quadrangle enclosing a square of 190 feet with very elegant front of the park, and there are 84 stalls with numerous apartments for servants attending and spacious rooms for hay, corn, etc., dispersed in such a manner as to render the whole perfectly convenient. So 84 horses, but that was just riding horses and carriage horses. The race horses were either down at Peacock Lodge and Park, at the stables at Swinton, or possibly even at York and Newmarket. Cart horses, heavy horses, they would be part of the whole farm and not quartered in the stable block. As I said, just really riding horses and carriage horses. And for a house of this size, they would have needed quite a few horses to just go about the daily business. I think one thing we need to say is that, wow, when we get strangers coming here for meetings, they'll sort of come down the park and they'll think that the stable box the house, and they'll telephone and say, oh, I'm here, but the next gate's locked. Are they big gates? Yes. Well, that's where we keep the horses, if we did come further down the park. But it's still there, it needs work doing. As Sarah, Giles and Dorian say, it will become a remarkable project and a venue for us here in this area.
Thank you, David. Now, I know how uncomfortable our chairs are, so we've got two more questions before I'm going to throw it out to the audience to see if anybody has got any particular questions. I've got so many more here that we've not had a chance to go through tonight, but we'll do two more and then I will throw it out to the floor to see if anybody has anything else. This is a quick answer question for all of the people on the panel. Given the size of the project at Wentworth and the experience of each of the panellists, how long is it going to take before Wentworth Woodhouse is finished? Giles, what do you think?
2025? No, I think we'll probably make real inroads in the next 10 years, but a project like this is never finished, really. There's always going to be something.
Dorian?
Yeah, I think when I think decades, but hopefully, yeah, the bulk of it will be done in the next sort of 10, 15. I mean, I've got 30 years probably in my career left, so it's possible.
Okay, well, I've only got about 10, I hope. So I would quite like to see the majority, certainly I would love to see the stables all done within the next 10 years. I think that would be a fantastic legacy, certainly for me when I retire. Realistically, I think it's probably going to be 25 years before the stables and the mansion are done to a great extent. But I think, as you said, it's a bit like Severn Bridge. I'm not sure that there will. I think there will always be some kind of restoration work going on. Julie, I don't know if you'd like to know.
Well, David and I will definitely need the lift.
My parents said that I can't come with you anymore.
Yeah, that's about as long as I think it'll take as well, sort of 20-25 years realistically. But like Sarah, I'd love to see the stables up and running in the next 10 years. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, and now final question before we hand over to the audience. Can we confirm who painted the apostles and Christ in the chapel, and when will they be cleaned? Is this one for you, Julie? David,
Do you want to speak first?
I will pass on this question.
Oh, okay.
No, the paintings in the chapel, in the college guidebook, they were in the style of Rubens. In an early guidebook that we thought they were Victorian. Now it's under such investigation that the public maturia and probably more important. The only thing I know is that in 1789, 14 large picture frames were bought for the chapel from Robert Blake Slate in York for £41, 1 shilling. It's thought perhaps that the paintings have been brought to the sale, but like lots of things here, we're not really sure. And then Julie said yesterday she'd heard, and so we may know more about this, because obviously we're not those experts, that at one point they left the house and went somewhere else, and then came back, which is probably when they were put up the way that they are now. And again,
Sorry, David, to interrupt you at that point, but I'm going to hand over to Giles because Giles, I think, knows more. He's the head of
this was one of those benefits of lockdown and the COVID pandemic that I was working from home and I sort of had some time to think about it, and I was sort of thinking, they're obviously not by Rubens. They wouldn't still be there if they were by Rubens. They would have been taken out and sold or something like that, or the family would have them tucked away somewhere. So they're not by Rubens. And I was discussing this actually with one of the trustees of the Preservation Trust, and we were sort of batting ideas backwards and forwards. And he got a friend of his involved who's an expert on art of the 17th and 18th centuries, and this chap said, I know who they're by, or who they're after, I suppose. It's a Flemish artist called Gerard Seeger, and one of the things that Gerard Seeger did was he had all his works engraved so that he could sell the engravings of his paintings. So that there's a full set of engravings of Christ and the Apostles, as in the chapel here, in the collection of the British Museum. So you can see, there they are, by Gerard Seeger. So he then knew who the expert on this artist was in Belgium. And we finally managed to get her over here, as we tried to get her earlier, but all the travel restrictions due to COVID, she couldn't come over. She came over, was it last year, earlier this year? I can't remember. And looked at them. She said, yes, they're definitely by him. And not only are they by him, but there are, I think, 4 sets of paintings of Christ and the Apostles by him in different parts of Europe. but we've got the best set in Wentworth Woodhouse. So they're, you know, when they're cleaned, as we're hoping they will be, you'll see how special they really are, and they'll really glow and look really worthwhile.
Julie, do you want to just tell us about the cleaning?
Yeah, so we've got a project that we're putting together at the moment to clean the whole chapel from top to bottom. Those of you who know the building well know that we did a light touch restoration on the ceiling and made the ceiling safe and did the chandelier. But other than that, we did nothing else in the chapel. So we hope to do top to bottom restoration there, which would include cleaning all the paintings that we've got and then returning them back to their current, broadly speaking, their current positions. Those of you who use YouTube, have any of you watched our little films that we produce? Anybody watched any of them? Hands up, please. Quite a few. We do have a YouTube channel, Wentworth Woodhouse, and we've got a dedicated group of volunteers who make these little films. And I can tell you that there is one being constructed at the moment all about the chapel. And it will, of course, focus partly on the paintings as well. So we haven't got a definitive timescale for that, but we're hoping to bid for funding, certainly this year, and get the project underway. And with it being, just one room on its own, we hope that would be done reasonably quickly. We wouldn't need to close it for too long. So hopefully you'll be able to see them in all their glory in the next year or so.
Thank you, Julie. As Julie mentioned, we do have a YouTube channel, and I should add that it's free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and every time you watch, we earn money from advertising revenue. So the more hours of viewing that we get on our YouTube channel, the more it helps towards our fundraising. So please do, if you're not already subscribed, please do subscribe. Do watch regularly, because everything we do in terms of the restoration of the site is covered on our YouTube films. Okay, well, I've come to the end of the first set of 10 questions that we have. I've got a list as long as you're on of other questions, but I thought at this point we've been going for about an hour and a half, and I know, as I say, I know how uncomfortable the seats are. I just wondered, are there any questions from the audience that you would like us to answer?
A lot of people in this room will be familiar with Catherine Bailey's book Black Diamonds, and it's also, as far as I know, it has been, it's been, the rights have been sold, I think to the BBC, but any idea of when we're going to see this blockbuster?
Can you just turn the microphone off for me?
Okay.
That's right, Brian said. It's just otherwise I'll get. Okay, so the question there was around the Black Diamonds book, by Catherine Bailey. And Catherine Bailey actually also wrote our Black Diamonds tour for us. And the question was, do we know when it's going to be produced as a film or television series or whatever? The answer is no, we don't know. It is being screenplay written, whatever the term is, screenwritten. So, the screenplay is being written at the moment, but knowing the film industry as we've come to know it, with working with film companies for such a long time, going from screenplay to production can take more than 10 years plus. So I don't know when it's going to happen. What I would say is, and I will pass on to David in a moment, but if Black Diamonds is made into a film or a television series, it will be transformative for Wentworth Woodhouse. And to be perfectly honest, we wouldn't be quite ready for it at the moment. So I think when you look at Highclere, with the success of Downton Abbey, and you see how that has impacted them in terms of visitor numbers, we would really need to get our act together and extend the car park before we could really cope with those kind of visitor numbers. So we're happy it's being written, and we're really looking forward to it coming out, but just give us a few more years to get our act together is what I'd say. David, do you want to add to that?
The only thing I can add to say is finances. About 18 months ago, when Catherine Bailey was here and we were working through the Black Diamonds, which she wrote, she said that she had to go home and she was starting to write a synopsis for the television rights, and she was going to come back and look at some things that we got from the Roy Young collection for further research, but unfortunately we've not heard anything else from her, so whether she's still on with the project, we'll wait and see. But hopefully yes, and hopefully sooner rather than later, but as Sarah said, when we've got the car park.
Yeah, another car park, not
Yeah.
just this one, another one. Any more questions from the audience, please?
Hello, yes. I'm just wondering, possibly for David, this question. We've talked before about how far to restore parts of the house made to how it used to be, particularly statement. Isn't this being compiled of the major items like paintings and furniture that was in the house and where it may be now? And is anybody keeping an eye out as to whether any of them are coming up for sale in private collections, or grants available to buy these items?
If you think back, as I said earlier, in 1948, 1949, I think she would have sold 4,500 different items, both in London and Country House sale by Spencer's here on the premises. That Spencer House sale, that Henry Spencer's sale, they got rid of 14 four-poster beds that they didn't want, that no use for. A lot of things from here are still within the collections of different members of the family, so hopefully at some point some of them may come back. Certain things do come up in sale rooms, especially in London and New York, and I know full well there's an antique dealer on Brook Street in London, and he's got a sofa made by Wright and Elric that's got provenance to here, but he wants £100,000 for it, and that's just a sofa. Yes, we'd like people to be very generous. Yes, that sale, that Henry Spencer's sale, lots of things were sold in this locality. A lot of those things have got to be still within people's granny's attics. We know that Rotherham Library, the Clifton Park Museum bought items, and Julie and I were talking yesterday about contacting them and saying, we know that bought A, B, C and D. Have you still got them? Are they in store? And what's the possibility of us having them back? There's some statuary in York Museum. There are plans afoot that when we're ready, and we've got to be ready for it, both for many, many reasons, they more than likely will be willing to lend them back here. They'll retain ownership, but we'll have things where they originally were. But fingers crossed, yes.
Any more questions? Gentleman at the front here had a question.
Yeah, I don't need a microphone, you're right. I just wanted to ask about the Marble Saloon when the plan was to restore it. Because that's obviously, to me, that's the crowning glory.
Crown jewel.
Yeah.
The Marble Saloon will be done as part of the major stateroom refurbishment, which will be after the stables. So we've got to raise the 50 million we need for the stables, and then we'll move down to the Marble Saloon and the rest of the staterooms down here. And you're absolutely right, it is the crown, the crown jewels of the house, really. It's also extremely expensive. I mean, I think we will try to do the decorative repair to the ceiling, because the ceiling looks really shocking. But the floor alone is well in excess of 250,000 just to do floor repairs. So it's going to be a very expensive project. But we have looked at ways of raising money to do that. So we might sort of buy a section of the floor, you know, where you subdivide the floor up and everybody donates to have a section or whatever. I don't know when it will be done, but we do appreciate that it is the absolute jewel of the house.
We have stabilised the ceiling, so as part of the roofing project, we made sure that the ceiling is not going to get any worse. So there has been some work to it, and we did check that all the balconies were safe. So we load tested those, and we with structural engineers, check that everything was kind of stabilised and conserved for now. But yeah, that's just to keep it safe.
One of the things as well with the staterooms is that there's a lot of this hidden work that has to be done as well. What we don't want to do is to do the decoration, which we may be able to afford to do. It is expensive, but the really costly thing is getting all the mechanical and engineering in to make the building fit for the future. So to get the atmospheric conditions right for our Woodhouse works of art, the security arrangements up to date, the heating, not on gas, central heating, which is what we've got now. We're still using the 1910 system that the 7th Elphick's William put in, which is fantastic, but we're reliant on gas. So, you then have to put the ground source heat pumps in, and it goes on and on, the list goes on and on. So this isn't just the cost of what you can see, it's what you can't see that is terribly expensive.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as Julia said, with the putting things like alarm systems in and environmental systems, it just doesn't make sense to do it in one. You can't just do it one room at a time. Really, the best approach to do is to do the whole lot in one go. So it's quite difficult to just pick off rooms one by one. Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. Any more questions from the audience? Ryan, you're the man with the roving camera.
I understand that the decision's been made not to clean the outside of the building and restore the stonework. Personally, I've admired this building for 60 years of my life. Beautiful architecture, and I can't understand the rationale that's behind that decision. That's one thing. The other thing is the incongruity of the stonework that's being used to repair I think it's the south tower, the grey stone among the original stone.
Right, okay.
A strange
Two good questions. I'll let Dorian answer the second part of that, or Giles. The first part of that question, about cleaning the front of the building, the decision has been made not to clean the front of the building at this stage, because frankly, we've got buildings that are falling down. So cleaning the building, any part of the building, is not a priority for us at the moment. Saving buildings is the priority. Now, Chatsworth was cleaned, I don't know, a few years ago, wasn't it? Well, they've been at their restoration project since the 1960s, when they've started to develop their site as a public venue. And it was nowhere near as bad as Wentworth Woodhouse in terms of its condition. So I am not saying that the front of the house will never be cleaned. What I have said is it will never be cleaned under my watch, because I cannot see in the next 10 years how we would possibly afford to do that when there are other priorities that are far, far more pressing.
There's no technical reason why.
No, I think the coal dust is not damaging it at all. I mean, we know it's not damaging the stone. If it was damaging the stone, that would be a different matter, but it's not. And it is part of the story of what's happened here. So for the time being, it's staying as it is.
Could I just ask a quick question? Because you've been looking at the building for a long time. I've looked back at pictures, and is it my imagination, but I think it looks a bit cleaner.
You think it looks cleaner now?
Yeah.
It is in parts.
Yeah.
But the pollution, to me anyway, is an abuse from the mining industry. And the antiquity of it doesn't justify leaving it a minute longer than necessary.
Yeah, the architects...
Considering the finances.
Yeah, the architects will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding when I asked about it early doors is that it have to be poulticed. Is that correct?
Can I hand to Dorian and Giles, because we also need to answer the second part of that question about the stone.
So, I was just going to say, one of the things with cleaning buildings like this is that you have to do all the repairs to the stonework as well, as part of the process, repointing, replacing damaged stone, things like that. And so the cost is enormous, and we can't afford to do that at the moment. But in the fullness of time, it's possible that we might go down that route, but it will be quite a long time in the future, I think.
Do you want to just talk about the stone on the building?
Yeah, so the stone is a scientific decision as well as an aesthetic decision. So when you're repairing stone buildings, you need to make sure that the material you're using is compatible with the stone that's already there. The way you do that is you analyse the stone that you're trying to match. You know, we use the British Geological Society. They take slithers of the stone under microscope, and then they compare that to their records of all the different stones and work out exact matches. And so it's to do with ensuring that you're using physically the right stone. Aesthetics come into it, so there's options to use. This stone is a very good chemical match, and over time it turns the buff colour which will match the existing. It might take a few years. There's iron content in that stone that when it oxidises it turns it that buff colour. So it's a long-term decision. I know it looks quite obvious now, but it's best for the building in the long run.
We did, the same stone was used on the centre of the house as well for repairing the urns and things on the parapet. And I think I'm right in saying that that's beginning to change colour. So, you know, where it's more exposed up at roof level. But of course, on the flat wall, it will take longer as it doesn't get as wet as often and things like that. But let's hope it changes.
I mean, I would add to that, because when we did the West Front steps, Julie and I, there were West Front repairs to the West Front steps, and Julie and I looked at them and said, oh my God, it looks awful, we've got the wrong stone, what have we done wrong, this can't be right. And it almost changed in front of our eyes. I cannot tell you how quickly the colour of that stone has changed. So I think, as both Dorian and Giles have said, it's an obvious repair when you see things at the moment, but with time you'll be amazed at how it weathers down and looks the same. Okay, one final question. Is there any more for one final question?
Thank you very much. It's been fascinating and really exciting. I think the only question I'm left with is, in terms of the future plans, the impact of traffic on the approaching roads, and particularly going through the village, and I wonder whether you've had to do anything to mitigate that, or you're expected to.
So yeah, we're very aware of traffic impact, and we are in discussions with highways and with the village and with representatives from the estate, etc. We have done traffic impact assessment work. We've been looking at where people come from, and actually it's quite interesting when you look at the 3 roads into into the village. So coming through the village, coming up from the garden centre, and then coming across this way. They're about equal actually. It's about third of traffic. I think we are trying to find solutions. It's a bit of chicken and egg. So in terms of public transport, there's a massive lack of public transport, which is not helpful. We have to show the need in order to help the argument of getting more public transport routes. If we don't want people to come in cars, that is definitely the best way of dealing with that. We've just put cycle racks into the car park so we can encourage people to come by bicycle. We are buying our own minibus so that we can bring groups in. And we're also going to be doing there's other things we can do with visitors to try and encourage visitors to come through different routes depending on where they're coming from. So, and on their tickets to follow the instructions we give them so that they don't all come at the same time. We also try to do things like make sure our deliveries are all in before the public visit the site, so we're not that traffic's not coming at the same time. Encouraging the staff to car share. There's lots of things we can try to do to minimise it. But ultimately, I think once we have more than one car park, and we do have plans for more than one car park, and they won't all be at the same pace. They'll be around both our site and the Fitzwilliam Wentworth Estate site. That will in itself encourage people to come from different roads depending on the direction in which they're coming from. So I can't pretend that if you create a major visitor destination here that there won't be an increase in traffic, because there will be. but we just have to try and manage that in a way that is least impactful as much as we can, and we will do that. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight. Everybody's had enough of the hard seats. Can I thank you all for joining us? I hope you found it useful and informative. We actually had about 40 questions, and we've gone through about 10 tonight. So if you would like us to do another question of Wentworth night, we'd be very happy to do so. But I'll leave you with that to feedback to us. Can I please thank my panel, Giles, Dorian, Julie and David for joining us this evening. I think it's been really interesting actually. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.